All right, let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. A lot of momentum building for the Raiders as we get ready for week one. Football is finally back, an exciting time. A lot of new additions, a lot of new pieces of this team coming together. But there's some recent news and some interesting data behind one young playmaker in particular. A lot of corroborating evidence that there's a special future star emerging for the Raiders. We'll get to that report and a lot of interesting data in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Las Vegas Raiders made a lot of changes this offseason. Everyone's covered them. Everyone's talked about front office, coaching staff, quarterback, right? Adding in veterans, offense, defense side of the football, making a lot of great changes. How about in the draft? Early and often, Ashton Jeanty, first rounder, off to a good start. Seems to, have a really great future in front of him for the Las Vegas Raiders. And of course, there's been a lot of rookies that have done well. We've covered them over the course of the offseason, training camp, and preseason. You look at Tonka Hemingway on the defensive line. You look at Charles Grant becoming a really good depth piece, right? There's been a lot of great players, a lot of really solid pieces emerging for this Las Vegas team as we get closer to the regular season. But there's one guy that the Raiders, I think, truly believe has superstar potential, day one massive impact, and that's wide receiver Dante Thornton out of Tennessee. In fact, they recently released a couple days ago their first unofficial depth chart, and what do you know it? You have Dante Thornton. Let me pull it up on the screen here for you guys, right there, listed as a starter right there on the top of your screen. You can see Thornton's a starting wide receiver. He's one of only two rookies starting for the Raiders across offense, defense, and special teams, with Ashton Jeanty being the other. You've got Thornton, then Colton Miller, Parham, Meredith, JPJ, DJ Glaze, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, of course, Geno Smith, and Ashton Jeanty rounding out the offense. You can see the defensive lineup there and the special teams right there on the bottom. We'll focus on the offense and Dante Thornton for today's video. And look, Thornton's had a really good, offseason altogether. One of the things we talk about on this channel, we said this back in May when he was doing good things like rookie mini camps. He said, listen, good players are good all of the time. Keep an eye on this kid, right? Because he was doing good in rookie mini camps, doing good in OTAs. And we said, listen, if he's good now, he'll probably be good later. And he's been good every step of the way. And the Raiders really, truly believe they have something special. Chip Kelly, Max Crosby, everybody's been talking about this kid every single step. But one of the things that can happen for any of these rookies, right? You get into actual preseason, you actually get into practices, and you may be a good player, you may be doing some good things, but the coaching staff just doesn't believe you're ready yet, or there's another player that's a little bit ahead of you that's a little bit better. Not the case. If you look at this depth chart, the Raiders are very clearly and explicitly saying, listen, he's a starter, he's a day one starter for us. That's a big sign for a guy who wasn't even like a first round pick. Obviously an outstanding achievement here for Thornton. But what's very interesting is that the Raiders, they've done a really interesting job here disguising how they want to use Thornton. Let me pull up this chart right here I created. If you look at his snaps in the preseason, the vast majority of the snaps Thornton played, he was run blocking, 52%, 51.7 if you're looking to be precise here. It's that chunk in blue there of this pie chart on the screen where snaps when he played where he was run blocking. Right? I mean, he's a big play receiver and he's run blocking. Only 48% of the snaps when he was in the game were even passes. So they did a very clear and obvious target here. They did not want Thornton to get anyone to get a lot of film on Thornton in the pass game. That was very clear. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason they call those plays, but it was very clear by design. You can look at preseason with other rookies, right? When they get into the fold, like when Ashton Jeanty played, for example, they gave him the football a lot. They didn't care about trying to show anyone, hey, look how good or bad he is, right? We want to give him some reps. I think you do that with first rounders that you can't hide. I think the Raiders were deliberately trying to hide or obfuscate how good Thornton is, right? And I think at this point, the cat may be out of the bag a little bit because he is absolutely impressing everyone. Again, we're seeing it inside the organization, outside the organization. Let me pull up this graphic right here I noticed earlier before the video. It's from Brian Baldinger, who is a great analyst. I'm a big fan of his. I recommend you follow him on social media, X, Twitter, whatever. He does a lot of his, he calls his Baldy's breakdowns. He just, his film stuff. It's interesting stuff. It's good stuff. But he's an honest broker. He's not like a talking head. He's not like one of these shouty show guys on one of the major networks. He's like, listen, he'll break down film, give his honest opinion. He said, listen, this guy here, Thornton, he's a player. He's a legitimate stud. He's a starter, and he's a big-time contributor. I trust Brian Baldinger, and listen, I trust Chip Kelly. I trust Max Crosby. Everybody has been saying phenomenal things about this Raiders rookie. He has a bright future, and they've done everything they can to try and obfuscate, the attention and all of this on him. But I tell you what, at a certain point, the good just shines through, and that's what we're seeing here with Thornton. We're talking about a potential, not just steal, a great find, a hinge him, a steal of the draft draft, a steal of the year, I think, emerging right here for the Raiders. Of all the moves they made and all the great decisions, selecting Thornton, a guy who, small sample size of catches in Tennessee just because of the style of offense, looks like he will be the missing big play weapon the Raiders have been looking for so many drafts. You all go all the way back to, I mean, however many years you go, Henry Ruggs, being an example. You look at Darius Hayward-Bay, I think, going back far enough, right? This is a Raiders team that's fallen in love with speed and big play receivers, and I think they finally got it here in Dante Thornton. All right, we got more to break down for you guys, but first, Raider Nation, in the comment section below, now's your chance. Give us your prediction for the Raiders record for the 2025 regular season. Before the regular season starts, put it in the comment section below. Look, how do you think it's going to go? You think 10-7? Maybe they make the playoffs? You think 8-9-ish, right? They're still a few years away, or what do you think it'll be? Maybe they surprise to the upside? Who knows? Give us your prediction, win-loss record, final win-loss record for the Las Vegas Raiders. Put it in the comment section below. But one of the things we talk about on this channel all the time is what we call corroborating evidence, right? We want to get different vantage points and different points, right? If one player or one coach says a player is good, that's good. We'll certainly take it. If the data says a player is good, that's good too. We'll certainly take it. But we like to get a bunch of different data points because if everybody is saying one thing, it doesn't mean it's always right, but it's usually a good indication that something certainly has a really strong chance of being correct. And everybody is saying good things about Thornton. In fact, let's pull up these two tweets right here. And this time of the year, I always like to look at what the fantasy gurus are saying when it comes to skill players, because these are guys, these aren't fans, right? These are just like, hey, who's going to get the most catches and yards? And every single fantasy guy, whether it's Nathan Jenke over at PFF or the Sleeper NFL account talking about fantasy finds, they say, listen, Dante Thornton Jr., he's the guy. Right, you talk about next Puka Nacua according to the Sleeper NFL account, or Nathan Jenke saying pick him up off your waiver wire. They're saying do it. He is a guy that can be very productive, and I love the fantasy guys this time of year because again, they're unbiased. They're not Raiders fans necessarily. They're not anti-Raiders. They're not pro or anti anything. They're just who's going to get a lot of catches, who's going to get a lot of yards, who's going to get a lot of touchdowns. And we say, Brian Baldinger saying this guy's a stud. We have fantasy people saying he's going to be hyper productive. We have the Raiders saying, yeah, he's a starter. We had the Raiders this entire process. Chip Kelly, Max Crosby, so many people saying, yeah, he's a stud. We've seen literally everybody come together and talk about how good Dante Thornton is, guys, and that is a great sign for the future of Thornton and the Raiders. We talk about this team and we talk about where they're sitting going into the season. And look, there's going to be some bumps, right? New coaching staff, new regime. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. Very tough division, very tough AFC at large. But I think if you look at the general trend of this team, they're adding playmakers, they're adding good quality guys. Genty, Thornton. You look at Jack Bash as a receiver that can do a lot of different things. Maybe replacing Jacoby Myers. Offensive line coming along. They got good depth guys in Rodgers and Grant, right? They're heading in the right direction offensively. Defensively, added some guys in the secondary. Got some question marks at a few positions, but I like the depth. I like what they got in the draft. They're heading in the right direction. How close they are to contending, we'll have to wait and see, but I think it's very clear when you look at where the Raiders are today, specifically with Dante Thornton, they've got a special player. And if Thornton can become even 80-90% of what the Raiders believe he can be, he'll be a huge weapon for this offense. Geno Smith last year did not take a lot of deep opportunities for Seattle, whether that was a function of the scheme, the situation, the down and distance, or whether the talent there. That will change with the addition of Thornton into this Raiders offense. All right, we got a little bit more to cover, but first, let's hear from the sponsor of today's video.
We'd like to give a big thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring today's video. Football season's right around the corner, and if you love the thrill of live betting, DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in-progress games right as they happen, and if sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports and have a shot to win cash prizes. And remember, new customers bet $5 to get $300 instantly in bonus bets and $200 off on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's right. New customers bet only $5 to get $300 instantly in bonus bets and $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to DraftKings Sportsbook today and sign up using our promo code SMI. Again, head over to DraftKings Sportsbook and sign up today using promo code SMI.
All right, guys, and one final note, I'm sure you Raiders fans have heard of this at this point, is that Amari Cooper has announced his retirement. He came back to the Raiders and then announced his retirement, saying, listen, I just can't play anymore. What's very interesting is, let me pull up this tweet here, post from Nick Walters here. when Amari Cooper said he was returning to the Raiders, he said, "Trust me, I still got some juice left." Back with the Raiders on a 1-year deal, Amari Cooper says he was looking for a place he could win and have the opportunity to show what I can still do. I think one of the things when these guys, these veterans that think I can still play, and they get to a place and they see a rookie, they see a young guy that is so far above them physically, they're just like, I just don't have it anymore, right? That happens all the time. That happened at the end of Jerry Rice's career. It happens to all the great ones. Like, oh, I've got a little more juice in the tank. I got a little more gas. And you get to a training camp, you get to a roster, and you see some young guys, and you're like, no, these rookies are good. They can play. They're so much better than I can. And it's not worth it for me to sit the bench, be the number 5 receiver on this team. And I think that's what Amari Cooper realized. I think he got to the Raiders and said, wow, Thornton, wow, Besh, look at this crew. Even the question mark with Jacoby Myers, where he wants to be there long-term, things like that. Trey Tucker, right, want to see if he can continue to grow and develop. He looked, I think, specifically at Thornton and said, this guy's a physical freak. He's a phenom. I'm going to sit behind him. I'm not going to get a lot of big play opportunities, right? Because Amari Cooper basically became, at the end of his career, sort of just a big play guy, a guy that get maybe 1 or 2 targets a game, maybe a key third down, maybe a key vertical. That's not going to be him with the Raiders because that's Dante Thornton. And I think he was told that, and I think he saw that for himself. He said, all right, listen, Thornton's the guy. He's their big play guy. He's going to be their, he's not going to catch 100 balls, probably not, but he's going to be the big play guy in certain situations. I wanted to be that for the Raiders, but I can look at this young wide receiver and say, no, he's going to be that for the Raiders, and the Raiders coaching staff is reiterating that, so I'm going to hang it up. And I think that's what happened. I don't know for certain. Amari Cooper hasn't said that. Thornton hasn't said that. The Raiders haven't said that, but I think the timing of it is so interesting for Amari Cooper to come back with a lot of juice saying, listen, I still got gas in the tank. I can still play. And then he shows up to the Raiders, sees these receivers, specifically Thornton is like, yeah, there's no space for me. I think he can still play. Amari Cooper can. I just think he's going to be playing as a backup, as like a practice squad emergency guy. And I don't think he wants to do that at this point in his career, and I don't blame him. And the moment he got to the Raiders and said, I think I can play here, and he saw Dante Thornton and says, no, he's better than me, and the coaches reiterated that, he's like, listen, I'm going to hang it up. I'm done. And again, this is just more corroborating evidence, guys. When we talk about this young wide receiver and we talk about the Raiders, there's just data point after data point after data point. And the fact that Raiders have done everything they possibly can this preseason, when we actually started getting film on this kid to like quiet it down. They're like, listen, we don't want anyone to get any looks at him. We want to cover all this up as best we can. That's indicative of a really talented playmaker. We've seen this in the past, right? I mentioned this in an earlier video I did where the Arizona Cardinals, when they had Anquan Bolden, they're like, listen, this guy is a stud. They covered it up as much as they could. We're going back to 2003. And then we got into the regular season. He absolutely unloaded. Now, I don't know if Thornton's going to be as good as Bolden, but the reality is there is historical precedent for guys that get a lot of attention, a lot of buzz, and the teams put a clamp on it saying, listen, we want to hide this guy a little bit. We don't want all the attention, all the publicity on him. The Raiders are following that same track again. But when you look at all these data points, when you look at his performance, rookie mini camps, OTAs, practice when it comes to training camp, then we see player after player, coach after coach. The Raiders name him a starter. Analysts like Brian Baldinger, who know what they're talking about, say he's great. Amari Cooper, a veteran, he wants to play. He gets to the Raiders and realizes, like, I can't. There's no spot here because this guy's better than me. You go all of this evidence, guys. You put it all together, and what do you get? You get the Raiders and pulled off, I think, the biggest steal of the year in selecting Dante Thornton. I think he's a big play machine for them, massive impact player day one, and probably when it's all said and done, he probably suits up for a couple Pro Bowls. This guy is that talented. What a find by the Raiders. Great job, Spytech, Carroll, and a great sign for the future of the Las Vegas Raiders here.